Hey, Robert here from Mesh Masters. I wanted to have a talk about invoicing because the last 8 years running an art studio and a team and hiring artists, usually freelancers, I would say about half of the people don't really know how to do invoicing correctly, why we need it, and bookkeeping in general. So I wanted to dive into and show you our invoice, so our invoice template, what's on there, what you must have, and why we do this. So let me share my screen. This is our invoice template. Now, before we dive into the details, let me talk a little bit about why are we doing this in the first place. So most countries, they require you to do taxes, and taxes require you to do bookkeeping. And what is bookkeeping? It's pretty much a log of all the transactions going in and out, or money you are owed or own somebody. And based on that log, numbers can be pulled out, and then on those numbers, taxes will be done. Now, obviously, for that log, you need those transactions in the log, and that evidence of the transaction is usually the invoice. And what you really want to do is, let's say this is an invoice of 100 euros, then on your bank account there will be a transaction of 100 euros, and then what you really want to do is link them. So maybe today I send the invoice, but the payment is done in 2 weeks. So let's say 2 weeks later, I'm going to do my bookkeeping, and then I see, this invoice has been paid because I see it on my bank account, and then you kind of link them together as evidence it's done and completed. So for that, we need certain stuff on the invoice to make the bookkeeping legit, so it's good for the government or what they need to do the taxes correctly. So diving into the invoice itself, what do we need exactly from a top level perspective? We need them or your client. We need you and your information. We need the invoice number, that's important, and the date, which is also important, and the due date, also very important. What you did for what amount of money with invoices, so VAT, because I'm in Europe, and how to pay. From a bookkeeping standpoint, you don't really need this, but it's very common. Otherwise, people who need to pay you might get lost. So diving into each one, them or the client. So obviously their name and their address is needed, but more specifically, especially with larger companies, you're going to send it to the company, but you'll probably be talking to a single person in that company. So the contact name needs to be on there. And often it will also be needed that you send the invoice to the finance department. So the company name, the contact person, and the department where it needs to go to, followed by the address. And if you have it, their VAT number. Now, this isn't always needed. So with VAT, I mean their tax number, by the way. This isn't always needed, but sometimes for international payments, or maybe there's a specific country bookkeeping rule, and you just need to add the VAT number to your invoices for, again, bookkeeping. So if you have it, always add it in there. And I recommend in your invoice template that you have a little space where you can, put it in. Then you or us. So your name, where you're at, your office address. So if you're a freelancer, that's probably your house, your home. Contact information is good to have on there. Bank information is needed. In this case, obviously, bank number, name, where the bank is, bank name, the BIC and SWIFT code for international payments, your VAT number, always have it on there. And if you have it, also your company ID, identification number. Now for international payments, it is super important that you also have the bank name and the address. And sometimes, depending on your bank, you'll have an in-between bank. So if an international person would pay us, so let's say from America, they will actually do the payment to this bank. So that's why we also have the bank name, address, and the BIC code. And then this bank will then wire the money to our other bank. So this is all super important. Am I missing here anything? No. Then the invoice number, super important. And this number is really for your own bookkeeping. The number is often needed in the bookkeeping of your client as well, but it's your number and your system. So you can really make up any number you want. You can simply say, oh, invoice 1, and then the next one you send is invoice 2, and then the next one is invoice 3. And this number is totally up to you to come up with a system you like. But what most people, or what usually happens, is they do some sort of a number like the year. So today is 2025. You could do the month, so let's say 10, and then you just simply do the number of the invoice in that month. So if this is your first invoice, you could do 01. So then the next invoice in the same month would then obviously be 2025 10/02. So if you're sending your first invoice in the next month, it will be 2025 11/01. Something like that for your own bookkeeping. So it's easy to see when you sent the invoice or in what order it is. And it might seem not that important, but this is really important. So please add this to your invoices. Then the invoice, let me get rid of this. Then your invoice date is the day that you send the invoice. And then it's common practice that there is a 30-day due date. And how that works is if I send it today, I'm sending it usually to their email. And then on the due date, so on this one, I will send a reminder if it hasn't been paid yet. And then that reminder will, in our case, have a 2-week due date. So I believe, so after 2 weeks, if they still haven't paid, I will send the second reminder. And then that one has a 5-day reminder date. And if they haven't sent it after that, I will send it to a company that will handle the payment for me. So realize here, especially with freelancing, that the 30-day due date, that's common business practice. So it's probably going to take a while for you to get your money. Many bigger companies, they pay exactly on the due date. So keep that in mind. This is also super important to have. Invoice date, due date. Then obviously, what did you do? Followed by the amount. So let's say that's 100 euros. You'll, depending again on to where you're sending the invoice to. So if it's an international invoice, rules change. But if it is for me locally in Holland, I need to add 20% tax on top of that, 21%, sorry. So yeah, so the end amount will be this. And these numbers are super important for bookkeeping. So the 100 euros needs to be on there. The amount of tax in percentage needs to be on there. The total number needs to be on there. And the amount of tax in money needs to be on there. And this again is for bookkeeping. I'm not going to dive into that right now, but you need these numbers on there. So also important. And then the last part is how to pay, which is kind of a recap of everything else. So kindly settle this before that, the due date, to the bank, really how to pay. And in this case, we've also added, if you're an international customer, that you need to use that in between bank to do the payment. That's really it. Not that complicated, but like I said, I often get invoices that are sometimes missing the number, or they don't have a due date, or I don't know how to pay them. Because from my standpoint, when I need to do an international payment, I really need all this information from you to do that international payment. So Build that template, have everything on there, make your life easy, make your customers' life easy, and it's just a win-win for everybody else. Catch you later, Robert.